Good afternoon. I'm Frank Niepold. I'm the ACE reporting lead for the U.S. National Communications. That is an treaty obligation for the United States or all parties as we report on something called ACE. You're going to get more used to that word and this version of what that word means as we go on here. I'm also the NOAA Senior Climate Education Program Manager and Coordinator and the Clean Network co-chair and actually one of the founding members. That was an important network to what brought us here today. So given all the challenges before us in trying to get to this day, it's amazing that we're finally here. Whew, it's been a lot of work. We now have some important support for this amazing work, thanks to the Wild Center, a key partner in this work, the Spencer Foundation, and Citizens Climate Lobby, who has enabled our ability to virtually engage today. So again, a deep thanks to for their support. Also, I want to thank the amazing coordination team who represent diverse and deep expertise on how to accelerate climate action through a variety of important capabilities that we have assembled here today. We have over 170 institutions and organizations gathered to put forth their best strategies and how we can build a plan together. Over 200 individuals representing a diverse and disparate communities assembled through this virtual platform during a pandemic. So the fact that we're getting good at doing virtual is pretty amazing because this is a new space for us. And you know, we have powerful contributions of the education, communications, community engagement, training, public participation, all trying to advance and accelerate climate action through those capabilities. A year ago, I couldn't have imagined we'd be here. Well, actually, we imagined we'd be here, so that's not totally true. It's pretty exciting to actually be here, but finally we're here. However, this is just the next phase. There's a lot of work that's before us, but it's been a lot of work to get to here. So thanks to the sustained commitment and persistence for making this all possible and joining us in this journey together. Great things are always done together. So I'm very excited about this process, and I'm very excited about what we can do together. So for the Zoom webinar today, today is a webinar. We'll be using the Q&A, sorry, still get my head here, function. You won't be using the chat function. So if you have any questions for the panelists or the host or technical issues, use the Q&A function, please. And we'll answer them when the panelists aren't in the panels or when we can. Just understand that we'll get to that as quickly as possible. Now I want to turn it over to Zati Citron Rodriguez. Hopefully I got that close.
Yes.
Good, my co-host for this event. And it's a great honor to have a partner like Zati's. She's a powerhouse, so watch out. Here we go. So Zati's, thank you for all your work and your vision for how we would do this, that you've brought to this, and you know, to make this as an inclusive and powerful virtual process. So thank you again for everything. And so I hand it over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Frank, and thank you for bringing us together today. I want to also give thanks to the attendees. So thank you all for taking time of your day to be here with us in this time of COVID and not social distancing, physical distancing, because staying together is really important on these times, and that shows up by your ability to be here and embark with us in this journey to hopefully get to ACE, US ACE strategy framework. My name is Isati Cintron Rodriguez, as Frank said. I am a climate scientist. I am from Puerto Rico, and I work at the intersection between science and advocacy. I think it's very important for those whoever that hold power to share it, to hold knowledge and power to share it, and also bring everyone together to the table in the design and implementation of climate action. We cannot get anywhere if we don't do this together. So today we have a packed agenda. So I want to first do some acknowledgement of the history that brings us here and the fact that we have to do this together. Give me 1 second. Yeah, so I want to acknowledge that. So we are going to embark on this section of the launch. So as a result of settler colonialism, indigenous people and colony residents have experienced history of violence, genocide, cultural erasure, occupied land, marginalization, intellectual theft, and subordination. This has led to intergenerational traumas of many kinds. Colonialism is a current ongoing process that perpetuates imperialism, systematic and continued injustice for many indigenous peoples and non-self-governing territories within the US, such as Puerto Rico, the oldest colony in the world, Guam, the Commonwealth of Northern Marianas, American Samoa, and the US Virgin Islands. While the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People was adopted by the UN General Assembly on September 13, 2007, with more than 90% majority vote of parties, the US voted against it. In 2010, President Obama announced the US support for this declaration. However, as the Senate has never voted this declaration into law, it is viewed as a resolution guiding all within the US to act in the spirit of the UN Declaration, but not mandating implementation. In solidarity with indigenous nations and communities of these lands, we would like to ground our work together in the articles of the UN Declaration, acknowledging that indigenous people have the right to free, prior, and informed consent on all aspects of human activity within their ancestral territories, their current communities, and their political, social, and cultural, scientific, educational, and other organization practices. These rights and others are outlined in the UN Declaration of Indigenous Rights, and we ask everyone involved in our joint work to take time to familiarize yourself with them. While we seek guidance from many who are part of the tribal nations and communities as we move forward on the ACE work within the US, it is their right to participate or not in this effort. Resources for those unfamiliar with Indigenous rights, histories, or movements around cultural and political resurgence are provided. Please take time to educate yourself as we engage in our joint work together. It is not the responsibility of Indigenous people to have to teach you. It is a gift given freely if so chosen. And then in the acknowledgement of racial oppression, we acknowledge the history of settler colonialism in the US that has not only taken a form of oppression, our founding documents dehumanize Black peoples brought to these lands against their will and subjected to violence of all kinds. Such history have also led to intergenerational traumas and continued injustice. More broadly, we recognize that the histories of colonialism and anti-Blackness have been fostered by white supremacy, and this has unjustly impacted and continues to unjustly impact people of color in many different positionalities. In solidarity with the Black Lives Matter, we acknowledge past and current racial violence, as well as multiple forms of colonization against Black, Indigenous, and people of color, and take responsibility to desettle and abolish continued social, economic, and political injustice. We affirm the need for ourselves, our governments and communities, and our institutions to center those among us who are the most vulnerable and marginalized so that we may reimagine our social structures with justice as a core principle. As we create this space, we work to honor the skills and knowledge practices and worldviews that are gifts to the field of climate resilience from Black, Indigenous, and people of color communities. We make an agreement to avoid transactional relationship, instead respecting principles of reciprocity and relationality. In this work, as we endeavor to develop lasting partnerships that may foster a more just future, guided by equitable decision-making process.
Thank you for that, Zatis. Those are important points.
Yeah. I think those are very important for us to ground our work together and to promote that you as the attendees and our contributors and collaborators in this make yourself familiar to. So in this context, we are also framing, so Action for Climate Empowerment is a mandate of the UNFCCC for all nations to weave into climate action the priority areas. And for talking more about that, we have the UNFCCC Youth Education Focal Point, Adriana Valenzuela, and she is delivering a message to us via video today. So we can go ahead and share that.
Thank you. Whoops.
Good afternoon, everybody. I am Adriana Valenzuela. I am the Education and Youth Focal Point at the United Nations Climate Change Secretariat. Greetings from Bonn, Germany. I work with Action for Climate Empowerment. Action for Climate Empowerment denotes work on Article 6 of the Convention and Article 12 of the Paris Agreement. And it has 6 key elements. It's about climate education, training, public awareness, public access to information, public participation, and international cooperation on these issues. It has been highlighted the key role that Action for Climate Empowerment plays to accelerate climate action. We need to promote behavioral change and also advance towards sustainable lifestyle. Action for Climate Empowerment has a work program. It's called the Doha Work Program, and it was adopted in 2012 in Doha. This work program has a time frame of 8 years, 2012-2020, and is a flexible framework for country-driven action. There are multiple activities that governments, but also other stakeholders can undertake to promote the implementation of Action for Climate Empowerment. And one of these activities is developing an ACE national strategy. In 2018, when governments got together to prepare the work program of the Paris Agreement that was adopted at COP24 in Katowice and is called the Katowice Package, they also adopted a decision on ACE. And they highlight the importance of integrating the 6 elements of ACE into climate policies. It includes the NDCs, NAPs, long-term strategies, but also they highlight the importance to develop national ACE strategies. And why? Because we need a long-term and strategic approach, but also we need that these national strategies will be prepared through a participatory process that promote collaboration and cooperation among the different sectors and stakeholders, but also among all the levels of governance. It means at national level, subnational, and local. I wish you all the best in your meetings, and we look forward to hearing your results. Bye.
You're muted, Frank.
Unmute my audio. How about that? Is that better? I said that so well. Here we go again. So you should have received this email in the email last couple of days for something called the roadmap. This is the document that we're going to use for the entire dialogue process and also the writing process for the strategic framework. You're going to get more comfort. You know, what are we talking about? This is where you go to follow this process that we've laid out. And one thing we want to draw your attention to is if you could fill out the participant characteristics survey. Some of you have already done that, but we still have more to go. And then also the, just pay attention to that third row there. That's where we're going to be asking you for the dialogue process. What are the priorities that we should be talking about? It's going to be a key piece. We'll set this up at the very end in case you miss it, but do pay attention to that. And we're going to be asking at the end of the day that you complete that, at least for dialogue 1, so that we know what conversations need to be had on Monday. So thank you again for being here. Come back over here. There we go. So I'm just going to build on Adriana's points a little bit. Sorry, I got to get my camera here so I can actually see. There we go. Sorry about that. So you know, under the Paris Agreement work program and the Doha work program that Adriana mentioned, we've been trying to figure out how to accelerate climate action through education, training, public access, public awareness, public participation, and collaboration since '92. But we continue to strengthen it through different points. And what we're really trying to do is look at how do we do a better alignment and development and implementation to avoid duplication on these elements. Whether it's Article 6, Article 12, that's UN process. But inside the United States, we do need a better way of coordinating these activities that we all do. And that's why we need a plan. So, you know, integration of ACE into the NDCs, again, we're inside of the UN process language here. But what that NDC says is that this is what a country is going to do to implement the Paris Agreement for the next 5 years. We are supposed to submit our next updated right now, between now and the end of this year. So, but what we're asking for is that how to include ACE into that. That's an important element that we're going to be talking about here. And then, you know, we don't have a focal point in the United States. So as the ACE reporting lead for the national communications, you know, the community asked that we do this. And so I'm acting in a you know, an unofficial capacity to do that for us. But we have not officially nominated that in our country. A lot of other countries have. So this process is normally led by that. And it's really about fostering participation of all of you. The richness of the work across the country is robust, but we, you know, still need to work out how do we do this together. So where are we? ACE related programs, initiatives in the US, we're robust. We have immense capabilities, and a lot of the people that have come here and assembled in this process are just representatives of that process across our really rich and diverse country. But but a lot of that richness isn't affecting all the communities. The United States, we haven't created a national plan. Other countries have, but no major emitting country has. So we're embarking on something that is uncharted territory. We don't really know how to do this, so we're learning this as we go. So bear with us as we co-create this process together. But you know, we do think that the next nationally determined contribution, if the United States stays in the Paris Agreement, it would be critical for us to have ACE and an ACE national strategy inside of that. So this is our opportunity because we need a plan. We need a plan, not because the UN has asked us for a plan, but we need a plan for our own communities and country. And that's you know, something we've come together to agree on. We'll see if everyone agrees on that through the end of this process. The road ahead. This has been a long process, but these are some of the important milestones that are coming up. And the one I want to draw your most attention to is there's a lot of steps in the international process. There are these regional dialogues that are happening. In the one on the United States and the Caribbean is going to be happening in the Americas and the Caribbean. It's going to be happening in August. But those are just one piece of this process. But then there's going to be a virtual event that relates to this. And you know, if you are interested in participating in that, we'll make sure that you know how to participate in that. But ultimately, the COP26, a lot of what we started came out of COP21 in 2015. COP26 is the next major COP that some people even call the education COP. But I think it's bigger than, it's more like the ACE COP, if I had to put it right. But there's going to be a large opportunity there for us to show up and show what we in the United States and all our communities and territories and nations and tribal communities, what do we want to do there? So it's just something to track. We're looking at this roadmap and how far and what do we want to have on this road for us. So there's a guide that we sent you as part of the read ahead. So the Integrating Action for Climate Empowerment into the Nationally Determined Contributions guide. It was one of the only guides we sent you. It's a recent guide, but it really shows why the NDCs are important and why ACE is important. And it talks about a lot of different considerations that are important for this, for developing an ACE national strategy. It must be participatory at the outset. We believe that we're fulfilling that requirement or beginning to fulfill that requirement here, the way we've done this. Multi-sectoral, multi-stakeholder, that is you, that is us, and growing. So it's not, we're not there all the way. Partnerships between climate and all ACE sectors, you know, I'm check. Protect and fulfill human rights. Clearly, the acknowledgements that Zatis you delivered, those are important to our process here. We want to make sure that we have that. We want to be gender responsive. That is important to our process here. We want to pay attention to vulnerable and marginalized groups. Absolutely critical. But the top recommendation of this guide is that you integrate ACE into NDC by developing an ACE national strategy. That's what we're doing here. We're calling forth on how would we develop an ACE national strategy. So what can we do? We can come together. We can build momentum for the importance of this work, and hopefully an administration or the next administration would take this forward and move it across the country with a strong support. Accelerate a just strategic planning process, by next year, if that's what's possible, and support the delivery of an ACE national strategic plan by COP26. This is ambitious. No one has done this yet. And the fact that we're doing it on an ambitious timeline makes it even more so, but it's the way it has to be. So together we can create this strategic planning framework that informs how would we do a very rapid, but the best version of an ACE national strategy. So the one important consideration is that we have some people here representing this action. We have significant climate action going on across the country. Over 65% of the population live in communities that are doing ambitious climate action, as seen by the America's Pledge report. We have significant work to draw from here, but they also need our support. But we have capabilities, but they're not very well aligned. They're very deep, but not aligned. And this is just one representation of all the richness of the work that's going on across the United States and our communities. But that's an opportunity. And that's why we're assembling these communities together in this process. So I'm going to stop here. And then Zatis, it's on to you.
Yes. And we have some people that are migrating from Google Meet to here.
I know. I made that. I made that mistake, but yes, we're sending those messages. We're getting them over there. They should have used the email, not the Eventbrite, but that's what happens.
Yeah. So they'll be joining us soon.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So I want to talk about what is our process and how are we aiming to build this framework together. So we're going to have it on the spirit of the Talanoa dialogue. And the Talanoa dialogue, for those of you who don't know, it is called as a facilitative dialogue. And this term is from Talanoa. It's from the Pacific Islands. And it describes a process where people just sit and settle issues through dialogues in a peaceful and cordial manner. It is designed to reach agreement and give a wealth of ideas on how to do it. And at its core, it is intended to be inclusive and participatory. So what we aim here is to have multi-level individuals that are contributing at the same level and take stock of the collective action and inform and prepare nationally determined contribution with the integration of ACE. And this is important because we want to design a process that leads by example. So if we want to have policies and climate actions that are rooted in participation from the design to implementation, we aim to model that process and a form of how that could look like. So this process, as the COP23 chief negotiator, which was, when the Talanoa dialogue was used as a tool for negotiation, he, in his words, is that the Talanoa dialogue established an inclusive and participatory process to allow governments, researchers, the private sector, and the civil society to share stories and showcase best practices on how to raise ambition of the NDCs. So this has 3 core questions. And then, so these 3 core questions are: where are we? Where do we want to go? And how do we get there? So what we are trying to get here is like, what is the play field? and develop a cohesive and collaborative vision and map out what are the actions to accomplish that vision. And then, so to describe our process, we have 3 phases. So we have a preparatory phase, a community process, and policy process. We are at the moment at the preparatory phase, as this launch is part of the preparedness. And you will receive from us, as we at the end of this launch, a link to fill a link for a form, so you can tell us what are your priorities and some of the inputs of the work that your organization or your institution has been doing in each of the dialogues, or the dialogues that are relevant for you. Then we will move to a community process. Then we will move to a community process starting Monday. So we will host 4 different dialogues. And out of those dialogues that will be informed by your priorities and inputs, what we're going to be in the dialogues is answering the 2 other questions, like where do we want to go and how do we get there? The proceedings of those dialogues will be used to create a report, which will be fed back to the community and strategic reviewers in order for us to have a final policymaker summary that outlines a framework for ACE national strategy. So this will send a signal for cohesive ACE integration throughout the NDC or national climate policies. So in order for us to view how that will work, right? We have this flowchart for you that is outlining what I just said, but in a more expansive way. So your priorities and story input will inform the formation of the pathways, and each pathway is a dialogue. We have 4 in total, starting on Monday. And then we will have a synthesis lead that will take the report from all the breakout sessions and perform a pathway synthesis that then will be sent to the participants of that pathway for review before that gets into the hands of our writing team. And then once we are done with the dialogues in August 20, then we will start the writing process, and that feedback loop into what we aim it to be a participatory and inclusive review and process of writing. And then finally, at some point between the end of September, October, November, we'll see, we will have a report to send out to policymakers. So that is the journey that you are joining with us. I hope that makes it a little bit more clear. Hopefully I didn't confuse you more, but I'm here for any questions. And I would like to acknowledge the depth of, and the diversity of institutions that we have here. We have over 170 contributors. So that means like organizations or institutions or companies that are coming together to build this. And just so that we have a quick time frame on what we're doing. Yes. So that we have a quick time frame, I also put it in the 3 different phases, is that we're launching today the dialogue series, and then we will move just as quickly as next week into the dialogues. Then we will move into the summative report based on the pathway dialogues, and then we will have a strategic and community review phase. So that will include all of you, like whether it's from community or strategic review. We want to make sure that we are including all the voices and the perspective as they need to be represented in that final framework to be released in October. So then we will have a period that is like our policy phase of briefing policymakers in the road to COP26, where we want to show up to exemplify what is this process for COP26.